Camille Parker awoke to the soft hum of early morning in her modest apartment, where the muted light filtered through gauzy curtains onto a small kitchen table scattered with remnants of yesterday's life, a faded family photo, an old love letter, and the worn journal in which she recorded her private thoughts. At 35, Camille had transformed pain into perseverance. Once she had believed in fairy tale endings. Now, after a bitter divorce that shattered her illusions of everlasting love, she dedicated her days to building a life for herself and her 10-year-old daughter, Amira. Since that difficult separation, Camille had poured every ounce of her determination into her work as a marketing professional. In the competitive world of advertising, her creative flair and strategic mind quickly earned her respect among colleagues and clients alike. Yet behind every successful campaign and every praised idea, there remained a quiet void, a longing for connection that she dared not acknowledge openly. The scars of her past had taught her caution, and while her career soared, romance had taken a back seat. Camille's heart, once vibrant and hopeful, now beat in measured rhythms of duty and quiet resolve. Every morning, before the rush of the day began, Camille would gently rouse Amira from sleep. The little girl, with her deep, thoughtful eyes and reserved smile, had inherited her mother's inner strength but carried an unspoken sadness that sometimes belied her tender age. Over breakfast, usually a simple meal of toast and fruit, Camille would ask about Amira's dreams and small adventures at school. Those moments, brief yet precious, reminded her that despite the turbulence of the past, there was beauty in the everyday. Even the soft clink of dishes and the warm aroma of coffee brewing in the background offered a quiet reassurance that life, in its simple continuity, could heal. The apartment itself was a quiet testament to Camille's journey. Every item was carefully chosen: a vibrant painting that once symbolized hope, a small vase of fresh wildflowers that stood defiant against the gray monotony of urban life, and stacks of books that hinted at unspoken dreams. In this carefully curated space, Camille had built a sanctuary for herself and Amira. Here she could allow herself a moment of vulnerability. Here she could remember the woman she once was before life forced her to become someone defined solely by her responsibilities. Yet, amid the comforting routines, a subtle undercurrent of restlessness had begun to stir. Late at night, after Amira was tucked in and the apartment fell silent, Camille's mind would wander to thoughts of what might be missing: a spark of passion, a tender moment of connection that could light up the dark corners of her soul. Nicole, her ever-optimistic best friend, often reminded her that love was not a relic of the past. "You deserve to feel alive again," Nicole would insist, her voice gentle but insistent. But Camille, scarred by betrayal and loss, clung to the safety of routine and the certainty of Amira's unconditional love. In the midst of board meetings and creative brainstorming sessions at work, Camille's thoughts would sometimes drift to the possibility of something new, a romance that might surprise her, challenge her, and ultimately heal the wound she had long concealed. However, the idea always receded like a dream upon waking, leaving her with a bittersweet taste of what could have been. Still, beneath the surface of her pragmatic life, the faint murmur of hope persisted. It whispered that perhaps fate was preparing a new chapter in her carefully constructed narrative, one where vulnerability and love might intertwine once more. As she stepped out the door each morning to face the world, Camille carried both the weight of her past and the fragile promise of a future yet to be written. The city around her bustled with life, each passerby a story in motion, while she herself moved with quiet determination, a single mother and a survivor. Unbeknownst to her, however, destiny was already at work, delicately interlacing threads that would soon challenge everything she thought she knew about love, trust, and the true meaning of family. That crisp autumn evening, Camille found herself reluctantly stepping into a grand charity gala held in a historic building at the heart of the city. Though her heart wasn't in the social festivities, she attended out of professional duty, a necessary networking opportunity that promised future business prospects. The hall was filled with the elegant murmur of well-dressed guests, soft classical music echoing off marble walls, and flickering candlelight that lent the room an ethereal glow. For a brief moment, Camille allowed herself to be swept away by the magic of the night, though her mind remained tethered to the practicalities of her everyday life. It was amid the sea of conversation and laughter that Camille first noticed Andrew Bishop. Standing near a grand column, Andrew exuded a quiet confidence. Dressed in a sharp, tailored suit, his easy smile and warm eyes suggested a charm that was both genuine and disarming. As fate would have it, their paths crossed when a mutual acquaintance introduced them. Camille's initial reserve softened as she found herself drawn to his unforced politeness and earnest demeanor. Throughout the evening, their conversation flowed effortlessly. Andrew's words were imbued with a thoughtful curiosity as he inquired about her work and gently probed into her passions. Unlike the others who might have flattered her solely as a successful professional, Andrew was particularly attentive when Camille mentioned her daughter, Amira. His eyes lit up with sincere interest, and he spoke of the importance of family and the beauty of nurturing young dreams. For Camille, whose heart had long been guarded against the vulnerability of love, this unexpected warmth stirred emotions she had tried so hard to keep at bay. Andrew's charm was not merely in his words, but also in the subtle gestures that spoke of his character. When a clink of glasses disrupted a lull in conversation, he quietly offered to fetch a refill, a small act that conveyed his attention to the comfort of those around him. Camille noticed the care in his actions, a stark contrast to the transactional politeness she'd often encountered in her line of work. As the evening progressed, their conversation deepened, touching upon topics as varied as art, travel, and the quiet joys of life that often go unnoticed in the hustle of daily routine. Though Camille had long dismissed the possibility of romance, something in Andrew's presence made her heart flutter with cautious hope. She recalled Nicole's words about opening oneself to love and found herself leaning into the conversation with a growing sense of trust. Andrew's genuine curiosity about Amira, "I'd love to know what makes her smile," he had remarked softly, struck a chord with Camille. It was as if he understood that her daughter was not merely an accessory to her life, but the very center of her world. Despite her reservations, the evening left Camille with a lingering impression of possibility. As the gala drew to a close, and guests began to bid farewell under the shimmering lights of the entrance hall, Andrew extended an invitation to continue their conversation over coffee. "There's something about you," he said, his tone both earnest and encouraging, "that makes me believe we might share more than just fleeting moments." In that simple gesture, Camille sensed the promise of a new beginning, a chance to rediscover the magic of connection that had eluded her for so long. Leaving the gala that night, Camille's mind buzzed with questions and a tentative excitement she hadn't felt in years. The elegance of the evening, the unexpected warmth of Andrew's presence, and the delicate interplay of conversation had sparked a small, yet persistent ember of hope. In the quiet walk home beneath starlit skies, she couldn't help but wonder if this chance encounter was the first step toward reclaiming the life and love she had once lost. Camille's decision to meet Andrew again marked the beginning of a cautious journey into a realm she had long shut off. Their first official date was arranged at a quaint Italian bistro tucked away on a narrow cobblestone street, a place where soft candlelight danced on rustic walls, and the gentle strains of a piano evoked memories of a simpler time. Camille arrived with a mix of anticipation and trepidation, her heart fluttering at the thought of venturing into unfamiliar territory. From the moment Andrew greeted her with a warm smile and a sincere compliment about her elegance, Camille felt the weight of her guarded past begin to lift, if only slightly. The restaurant's intimate ambience provided the perfect setting for an evening of unhurried conversation and shared confidences. Over plates of freshly made pasta and glasses of deep red wine, Andrew and Camille exchanged stories of their pasts, their dreams, and the little details that made up the mosaic of their lives. Andrew spoke with gentle candor about the challenges and triumphs of building his own business empire, while Camille recounted tales of motherhood, resilience, and the silent battles fought in the quiet hours after Amira's bedtime. As the evening progressed, the conversation naturally turned to matters closest to Camille's heart, her daughter. With a hint of vulnerability, she explained how Amira was not just a part of her life but the very essence of it. Rather than reacting with the aloofness or hesitation Camille had anticipated, Andrew's eyes sparkled with genuine interest. "I'd love to meet her someday," he said softly, as though imagining the bright laughter of a child who had inherited both beauty and strength. "I believe that every child carries a universe of wonder within them." His words, sincere and unassuming, resonated deeply with Camille, who had long feared that introducing someone new might disrupt the delicate balance of their carefully constructed world. Throughout dinner, Andrew's demeanor remained respectful and attentive. He asked thoughtful questions about the books Camille loved, the small moments of joy she found in her everyday routine, and even the quiet aspirations she once held dear. There was no pretense in his inquiries, only a gentle desire to understand and appreciate the layers of the woman sitting before him. Camille found herself opening up, revealing not only her triumphs but also the lingering shadows of heartbreak that had, for years, held her captive. As the night drew to a close, the soft glow of the bistro gave way to the cool whispers of a city settling into slumber. Outside, under a velvet sky punctured by stars, Andrew walked Camille to her car. In that tender moment, with the night air filled with unspoken promise, he reached out and brushed a stray lock of hair from her face. "There's something incredibly special about you, Camille," he murmured, his voice low and sincere. "I feel as if I've found something I didn't even know I was looking for." Her heart, still tender from past wounds, hesitated for a brief moment before giving in to the spark of hope that danced in his eyes. Though Camille still carried a cautious reserve born of past disappointments, that evening planted a seed of possibility. As she drove home, the gentle hum of the engine seemed to echo the newfound rhythm in her heart, a rhythm that, despite its tentative beats, whispered of second chances and the promise of rediscovered joy. And so, beneath the quiet luminescence of the moon, Camille allowed herself to believe that perhaps, just perhaps, love could return to her life in the form of this sincere and captivating man. The following Saturday brought a clear, cool morning as Camille decided it was time for Andrew to meet the person most precious to her, her daughter Amira. They agreed to meet at a local park, a serene oasis in the heart of a busy city, where sunlight danced on dew-kissed grass and children's laughter filled the air. Camille's heart pounded with a blend of excitement and apprehension. After all, Amira was not only her beloved child but also the guardian of her deepest vulnerabilities. Andrew arrived a few minutes early, his presence calm and reassuring against the backdrop of rustling leaves and chirping birds. He carried with him a small, carefully wrapped package. A book that he had learned from Camille was one of Amira's favorite treasures. As Camille approached, Andrew's gentle smile lit up his face, and he greeted her with the familiar warmth that had enchanted her during their date. In the brief exchange of pleasantries, a silent understanding passed between them. This meeting was not merely an introduction but the tentative beginning of bridging two very different worlds. Amira appeared a few moments later, hand in hand with Camille, her eyes wide with curiosity and a quiet reserve that belied her tender age. Dressed in a simple yet neat outfit, she clutched a small stuffed animal, a silent confidant that had seen her through many days of uncertainty. As they approached, Andrew knelt down to her level, his eyes kind and sincere. "Hello, Amira," he said softly, extending the package with a gentle smile. "I have something for you." Amira hesitated for a heartbeat before accepting the gift. With careful fingers, she unwrapped the package to reveal the book, its cover vibrant and inviting. Her face lit up with a tentative smile as she whispered, "Thank you." Andrew's manner was neither overbearing nor intrusive. Instead, he respected the quiet boundaries that Amira had established. He spent a few moments chatting softly about the book's adventures, carefully choosing his words so as not to overwhelm her. Camille, watching from a short distance, felt a cautious optimism stir in her chest. It was a subtle moment, yet profound, an acknowledgement that Andrew could perhaps integrate into their life without forcing himself into every crevice. As the park's gentle ambience wrapped around them, the conversation naturally meandered from literature to the small wonders of everyday life. Andrew pointed out a cluster of bright autumn leaves and shared a childhood memory of collecting them with his own younger sister. Amira's eyes, once guarded, began to reflect curiosity and a flicker of warmth as she listened. Camille observed quietly, grateful for the genuine interest Andrew displayed toward her daughter. His patience, his willingness to let Amira dictate the pace of their interaction, reassured her in ways that words could not. After a while, as the sun climbed higher and the park buzzed with the sounds of mid-morning life, the trio found a shaded bench under a sprawling oak tree. Here they sat together, the conversation gentle and unhurried. Camille noted that while Andrew did not overstep, his presence was a comforting counterbalance to the uncertainty that sometimes clouded her thoughts. "She's very observant," Andrew remarked quietly to Camille. "She's watching and listening. I'd probably be the same if someone new came into your life." His words, measured and empathetic, resonated deeply with Camille, who had long feared that any intrusion into their small world might cause more harm than good. As the meeting drew to a close, the parting was filled with promises of future get-togethers, small tentative steps toward building a bond that might one day feel as natural as the air they breathed. Amira clung a little more tightly to her mother's hand, yet her eyes betrayed a spark of curiosity that hinted at the possibility of acceptance. For Camille, this simple yet profound encounter served as a reminder that love, no matter how tentative or unformed, could blossom in the most unexpected of places. And in that quiet park, under the watchful gaze of an ancient oak, a new chapter in their intertwined lives began to unfurl. In the weeks that followed, Andrew's presence in Camille and Amira's lives became a quiet, persistent rhythm, a gentle cadence that slowly integrated into their daily routines. Mornings at the apartment took on a slightly warmer hue as Andrew would occasionally bring small, thoughtful gifts when visiting for weekend brunches. A carefully chosen book here, a bouquet of wildflowers there, each gesture spoke volumes of his earnest desire to become part of their small universe without overwhelming it. At first, Amira remained cautious. She would observe Andrew from afar, her eyes reflecting both curiosity and a guarded distance. In the delicate silence of her journal entries, she noted, "He's nice to Mom, but when he looks at me, his smile stops at his eyes." The ambiguity of his gaze left her with questions that were as complex as they were unspoken. Yet for Camille, every small step was a victory. She saw the kind manner in which Andrew interacted with her daughter, respecting her space and allowing Amira to set the pace. His gentle demeanor during their outings, a visit to the local art museum or a quiet stroll in the park, reinforced the hope that, over time, Amira might come to trust him. Evenings became a delicate tapestry woven with shared moments. At home, while Amira did her homework or lost herself in the pages of a favorite book, Andrew would sit quietly at the dining table with Camille, discussing everything from new marketing strategies at work to the little joys of weekend life. Their conversations flowed with an easy intimacy that both comforted and excited Camille. It was as if, in Andrew, she had found a partner who respected not only her dreams but also the tender, unspoken bond she shared with her daughter. Despite the slow progress, there were moments that hinted at the possibility of deeper connection. On one breezy Saturday afternoon, while the trio visited a bustling street fair, Andrew gently coaxed Amira into trying a game at a small carnival booth. Though hesitant at first, Amira's face eventually softened into a small, almost imperceptible smile as she won a plush toy. Camille watched, her heart swelling with cautious optimism as Andrew's eyes shone with pride, an emotion that transcended superficial charm. Yet, even as these moments unfolded, Amira's inner diary of feelings remained a silent testament to her uncertainty. That same day when they parted ways at dusk, Amira scribbled in her journal, "Sometimes I feel invisible when he's around, like he only notices me in the shadows." For Camille, these mixed signals became both a source of anxiety and a challenge to her desire to believe in second chances. She understood that healing old wounds was a process, and that trust, especially from a child who had weathered so many storms, would take time to rebuild. In quiet moments alone, Camille would reflect on the early days of her own heartbreak, moments when the future had seemed bleak and unyielding. Now, as Andrew continued to weave himself into their lives with gentle persistence, she clung to the hope that time might smooth over the rough edges of Amira's reservations. In the midst of this evolving dynamic, weekends became cherished rituals. Andrew's presence, although still tentative, brought with it an air of lightness that had been absent for far too long. As the season slowly shifted and autumn deepened into winter, the small acts of kindness and shared laughter served as quiet anchors in a life that had once been defined solely by survival. Camille, who had once dismissed the notion of love as a dangerous distraction, began to glimpse the possibility that perhaps, with patience and understanding, even fragile hearts could learn to trust again. And so, amid the soft glow of early evenings and the gentle hum of a life gradually transforming, a steady presence was forming, one that promised not only the rekindling of hope but also the chance for a family to grow in unexpected ways. With every careful gesture and every shared smile, the promise of a brighter, more connected future inched closer to becoming a reality. As winter's chill began to soften into the gentle promise of spring, the delicate balance that had been slowly built between Andrew, Camille, and Amira started to show subtle strains. Though Andrew's presence had brought a sense of renewal and tentative hope, small moments of discord began to surface, quiet incidents that would later seem, in retrospect, like harbingers of deeper troubles. It happened one rainy afternoon during a family picnic at a local park. The sky was overcast, and a light drizzle fell steadily as the trio set out a modest spread on a weathered blanket beneath a large oak. Camille had carefully planned this outing in the hope that shared moments outdoors would further soften the lingering reservations Amira harbored. For a while, the laughter and gentle chatter among the trees seemed to ease the tension. However, as the afternoon wore on, a minor mishap would begin to expose cracks in the veneer of harmony. Amira, ever cautious and a bit distracted by her own thoughts, accidentally knocked over a glass of lemonade. The cool liquid spilled onto the blanket, pooling near where they had been sitting. In that moment, Andrew's previously gentle tone shifted unexpectedly. "Be careful, Amira," he said sharply, his voice cutting through the soft patter of rain. Though he quickly masked the harshness with a forced smile, the moment left an uneasy silence in its wake. Amira's eyes fell, and a tremor of hurt passed over her face, a silent question that neither she nor Camille could immediately voice. Later that evening, at a dinner arranged at home, another small incident unfolded. As they sat together around the dining table, Amira accidentally dropped her fork. The clatter of metal against tile was minor, but it prompted a terse sigh from Andrew. "Another spill," he remarked, his words laced with an edge that felt entirely out of place. Camille's heart skipped a beat as she exchanged a worried glance with her daughter. In the quiet aftermath, Amira's notebook, her personal journal, captured a confession in neat, trembling script. I feel like he only likes me when I'm invisible. In the following days, Camille found herself wrestling with conflicting emotions. Andrew's earlier gestures of kindness and the gentle moments they'd shared seemed to be clouded by these flashes of impatience and disapproval. At work, while she maintained her composed facade, her mind frequently returned to those incidents. Every smile from Andrew, every seemingly innocuous remark, was now weighed against the shadow of that sharp tone. Had his initial charm been a facade? Was there something deeper lurking behind those carefully controlled expressions? Late one night, as Camille sat by her bedroom window listening to the distant hum of the city, she replayed the moments over and over. The park incident, the dropped fork at dinner, all of it coalesced into a troubling picture of a man who might harbor an unspoken impatience or darker side hidden beneath his courteous exterior. She recalled Amira's quiet, pained expression and the subtle way her little shoulders had slumped after those encounters. It was as if, in those moments, Andrew's warm presence had evaporated, leaving behind a cold reminder of past hurts. Determined to understand what was happening, Camille resolved to speak with Amira the following morning. Over a modest breakfast, as the rain gave way to a fragile spring sun, Camille gently asked, "How did you feel about yesterday?" Amira, her eyes darting away for a moment before meeting her mother's gaze, replied in a soft whisper, "I don't know, Mom. Sometimes I feel like I disappear when he's around." The confession, delivered in the quiet intimacy of a shared secret, sent a chill through Camille's heart. In that moment, she realized that while hope had been rekindled by Andrew's initial charm, the small cracks were beginning to reveal a more complicated truth. Camille spent the rest of the day lost in thought. She knew that building trust, especially for a child who had learned to protect herself against disappointment, would require more than gentle smiles and kind words. It would require consistency, patience, and the absence of harshness. As she watched Amira's quiet resilience, Camille vowed that no matter what came next, she would be the unwavering guardian of her daughter's well-being. And so, in the midst of these small but significant fissures, the fragile tapestry of their new life began to show its true colors, a mixture of hope and warning, love interlaced with the unspoken promise that nothing would be allowed to tarnish the light in Amira's eyes. One cool evening, as twilight draped the city in shades of lavender and gold, Camille found herself at an elegant restaurant that exuded timeless sophistication. The soft clink of fine china and the murmur of contented diners created an atmosphere of quiet intimacy, a perfect backdrop for a moment that would change the course of her life. Over a meticulously prepared dinner, Andrew's gentle conversation and thoughtful attentiveness had woven a spell of enchantment around Camille. Though doubt still lingered in the recesses of her mind, the warmth he exuded made it hard to ignore the possibility of a future filled with newfound hope. As dessert arrived, a decadent slice of chocolate cake adorned with fresh berries, Andrew's eyes took on a serious glint. The soft light caught the sincerity in his expression, and with a quiet confidence that belied the vulnerability of the moment, he reached across the table and took Camille's hand. "Camille," he began in a tone that trembled between determination and tenderness, "these past weeks have shown me how extraordinary you are, and how extraordinary Amira is. I believe that together we could create something truly beautiful." With a measured pause, he produced a small velvet box from his jacket pocket. In that suspended moment, the clatter of cutlery and the gentle hum of conversation fell away, leaving only the beating of Camille's heart and the promise of something irreversible. In a voice both soft and resolute, Andrew asked, "Will you marry me?" His question hung in the air, radiant with hope and expectation. Camille's breath caught in her throat as she regarded him, the man who had slowly woven himself into the fabric of her life, the man who had managed to kindle a flicker of joy even in the darkest corners of her past. Though a torrent of emotion surged within her, her answer came in a whisper as sincere as it was affirmative, "Yes." That night, in the intimate glow of candlelight and shared smiles, the promise of marriage seemed to erase some of the shadows that had long haunted Camille's heart. Yet, even as she embraced the warmth of this new commitment, she couldn't help but notice the subtle change in Amira's demeanor. When the subject of the upcoming wedding was broached at dinner later that week, Amira's eyes darkened with hesitation. In a quiet, almost inaudible whisper, she asked, "Do we have to live with him?" The question, innocent yet laden with unspoken fears, sent ripples through Camille's carefully balanced world. Camille reassured her with tender words and promises of a life filled with love and understanding, but the moment left a lingering chill, a warning that not all hearts were ready to embrace change without reservation. In the days that followed, wedding preparations became the center of Camille's attention. Andrew took charge of most details, his decisive manner both impressive and, at times, disconcerting. Every floral arrangement, every carefully chosen piece of music, and every meticulous detail was a testament to his desire to create a perfect celebration. Yet, in the quiet hours of the night when Camille sat alone, she could not shake the feeling that beneath the surface of these well-laid plans lay a tension waiting to emerge, a tension that might one day unravel the fragile trust they were all trying to build. As invitations were sent and wedding dates confirmed, the reality of this new chapter began to set in. Camille, in her heart, believed that love, true love, could conquer past wounds and forge a future of happiness. Yet, the memory of Amira's whispered question lingered like an echo, a reminder that the path ahead was uncertain. Even as she smiled at Andrew's reassurances and the gentle promise in his eyes, Camille silently vowed to remain ever vigilant for the sake of her daughter's happiness. For in that promise lay the hope of a new beginning, a promise that no matter what storms might come, she would always be there to shelter Amira's tender heart. In the weeks leading up to the wedding, the atmosphere around Camille's home grew charged with both excitement and unspoken tension. As the final details of the ceremony were ironed out and the flurry of wedding preparations reached its peak, Camille found herself caught between the joyous anticipation of a new beginning and a nagging, unidentifiable sense of foreboding. Amid the bustle of fittings and rehearsals, one particular evening would prove to be a turning point, one that would force her to confront the subtle warnings she had long tried to ignore. That evening, Camille attended her final dress fitting at an upscale boutique. The venue was bathed in soft, golden light, and the elegant mirrors reflected a woman on the cusp of transformation. As the seamstress made the final adjustments to the gown, a shimmering, intricately detailed dress that symbolized the promise of a future filled with hope, Camille's thoughts drifted to the memories of her past, and the courage it had taken to rebuild her life. Yet, amid the joy of anticipation, she sensed an underlying tension, a quiet dissonance that seemed to echo in the fabric of the night. In the adjacent room, Amira sat quietly on a plush settee, her small hands twisting together as if seeking solace in their own interlaced comfort. Her eyes, usually bright with unspoken wonder, now darted nervously around the room, as though they could detect an approaching storm. The silence between mother and daughter was punctuated by soft whispers and the rustle of delicate fabric, until, at last, Amira spoke. In a low, trembling voice, she confessed, "I like it when it's just us." The words, spoken with the weight of a guarded secret, cut through Camille's heart with the sharp clarity of a warning bell. Immediately, Camille knelt beside her daughter, drawing Amira into a protective embrace.
No one vil eva cambetve nu es, shemom uret, pressing a gentle kiss to Amira's forehead.
Yet, even as she offered words of reassurance, Camille could not shake the cold intuition that had taken root in the depths of her soul.
The dress fitting, once a symbol of celebration and transformation, now bore an undercurrent of sorrow, a silent testament to the fragile balance between hope and fear.
Later that night, as Camille lay awake in bed, the soft hum of the city outside seemed to echo the tumult in her heart. The memory of Amira's quiet plea, juxtaposed against the backdrop of lavish wedding plans, filled her with a dread that she could not fully articulate. In the quiet solitude of the dark, she began to wonder if the promise of a new beginning was, in fact, masking a storm yet to come. A storm that might shatter not only her dreams but the delicate sanctuary she had built for her daughter. Determined to confront these unsettling feelings, Camille resolved to remain ever alert in the days ahead. The final warning, subtle and unassuming, had spoken volumes to her inner self. And though she clung to the hope of love's renewal, she knew that the path forward would require vigilance, courage, and an unyielding commitment to protecting the one person who mattered most, Amira. The day of the wedding dawned in a surreal blend of beauty and tension, a grand affair set against the backdrop of an ornate venue draped in white roses and delicate lace. Camille, resplendent in her gown, walked down the aisle with measured grace, her heart heavy with both hope and a silent trepidation that only she seemed to understand. Amira, dressed in a small black suit that contrasted sharply with the pastel elegance of the celebration, stood beside her with a stiff, uncertain posture that belied the joy expected on such a day. As the ceremony unfolded amid the soft strains of a string quartet, Camille's eyes occasionally wandered to Amira, seeking some sign that the day was unfolding as it should. The crowd was enraptured by the spectacle, the exchange of vows, the promise of forever, and the fleeting moments of perfection that would be remembered for years to come. Yet, beneath the surface of this idyllic scene, a tension simmered that would soon burst forth in a way no one could have anticipated. During the reception, as laughter mingled with the clinking of glasses and the soft hum of congratulatory chatter, an unforeseen mishap shattered the delicate calm. Amira, in a moment of nervous distraction, accidentally dropped a plate, the porcelain shattering on the floor with a sound that froze the room. A heavy silence descended, punctuated only by the sharp intake of breath from the assembled guests. Before anyone could react further, Andrew's voice, cold and unmistakably harsh, cut through the stunned quiet.
Amira.
How many times have I told you to be careful? His words, laced with an anger that seemed disproportionate to the minor accident, hung in the air like a curse. In that moment, time slowed. Amira's eyes widened in terror, and the joyful glow of the celebration dimmed into a shadow of disbelief. Then, as if compelled by an instinct she could no longer deny, Andrew's hand rose swiftly and in a single shocking motion, struck Amira across the face. Gasps erupted from the crowd as the sound of the slap reverberated through the hall, shattering the illusion of a perfect day. Camille's heart pounded in her chest as she watched, paralyzed by horror and disbelief. The world around her, once a tableau of joy and celebration, had transformed into a nightmare of betrayal and violence. Andrew's face, once warm and earnest, now contorted with a cold severity that left no room for denial. As he attempted to mumble a half-hearted apology, urging Amira not to make a scene, Camille's voice, steeled by the force of 1,000 unspoken truths, sliced through the cacophony of shocked murmurs. You are the scene. In that moment, every carefully laid plan, every hope for a future built on renewed love, crumbled before her eyes. The grandeur of the wedding, the promises made under twinkling chandeliers, and the dreams of a new beginning were all overshadowed by the brutal reality of Andrew's actions. Camille's mind raced with memories of subtle warnings, the small cracks that had begun to appear in the veneer of his charm. And now, as she stared at the man who had so deceived her, she knew that the time for denial had ended. The shock that rippled through the guests was palpable, their whispered conversations laced with disbelief and sorrow. Amira stood frozen, tears silently streaming down her face, while Camille's protective instincts surged forth with an intensity that defied the constraints of polite society. The sacred promise of the day had been violated, and in that heartbreaking instant, Camille realized that the person she had once hoped to build a future with was, in fact, a threat to everything she held dear. In the aftermath of the shocking incident at the reception, time seemed to slow to an agonizing crawl. The grand hall, once filled with laughter and soft music, now reeked of silence and disbelief. Camille's heart pounded in her ears as she watched Andrew's feeble attempt at damage control, a whispered plea for calm amid the chaos he had wrought. Yet, as the reality of what had transpired sank in, a fierce, unyielding clarity replaced the fog of denial that had long clouded her judgment. Camille's eyes, once softened by hope, now burned with a quiet fury. The memory of every subtle warning, each harsh word, each fleeting moment of coldness, flashed before her like a series of painful vignettes. In that charged moment, as the guests murmured in shock and Andrew's attempts at justification fell flat, Camille understood that the man who had charmed her was not the embodiment of love and promise, but a harbinger of pain and disillusionment. You are the scene, she had declared, and in those words lay the rebuke of a lifetime of self-deception. Drawing on a newfound reservoir of inner strength, Camille moved through the stunned crowd with a determined urgency. Every step she took was imbued with the resolve to protect her daughter and reclaim the narrative of her own life. Andrew's apologies, weak and unconvincing, fell on deaf ears as Camille's heart hardened against the lies she had once believed. In the quiet, tear-stained gaze of Amira, who stood trembling on the edge of a shattered dream, Camille saw not only the pain of the present moment but the promise of a future where her daughter's innocence would never again be compromised. As murmurs of discontent grew louder and concerned voices rose in protest, Camille's inner awakening crystallized into a simple, unwavering truth. Love was not to be sacrificed at the altar of appearances or grand gestures. It was to be nurtured, respected, and fiercely protected. With that realization burning bright, she turned away from Andrew, whose contrite eyes now held nothing but the emptiness of a man who had lost everything. No more, Camille whispered, her voice a solemn vow to herself and to Amira. In that moment, she resolved that the life they had known, a life filled with unspoken fears and fragile hopes, would be left behind. A new chapter was about to begin, one defined not by the illusions of a perfect love, but by the steadfast commitment to protecting what truly mattered. The hall, once an arena of celebration, had become a stage for a heartbreaking awakening. And as Camille gathered Amira into her arms, she knew that every step forward from that painful night would be a step toward reclaiming the strength that had been buried beneath years of quiet resignation. The pain of betrayal would never be forgotten, but it would serve as the catalyst for a transformation that would guide her and her daughter toward a future built on trust, safety, and the unbreakable bond of love. In the fraught moments that followed the wedding day's shocking turn, Camille's mind raced with a singular thought. The only way to heal was to leave behind the remnants of a life tainted by betrayal. Without a second to spare, she gathered Amira in her arms and slipped away from the chaos that had consumed the celebration. The grand hall, once a testament to hope and new beginnings, now echoed with the bitter sounds of regret and shattered dreams. Outside, beneath the soft glow of streetlights and a cool, somber sky, Camille and Amira began a desperate journey toward safety and healing. The night was quiet except for the distant murmurs of shocked guests and the occasional wail of a siren. Camille's heart pounded as she navigated the darkened streets, her every sense alert to the possibility of further danger. Amira clutched tightly to her mother's hand, her small fingers trembling as though trying to hold onto a lifeline in a turbulent sea of emotions. With each step away from the wedding, Camille vowed silently that she would never again allow anyone to compromise the safety and happiness of the one person who meant more to her than anything in the world. Not long after, Nicole, who had rushed to the scene after hearing of the incident, joined them on the deserted sidewalk. Her eyes, filled with shock and a simmering anger, met Camille's with unspoken solidarity. "We need to get out of here," Nicole urged softly, her voice steady despite the whirlwind of emotions. Camille nodded, her resolve hardening with each passing moment. The past few weeks had been a test of her strength and faith, and now, faced with the undeniable truth of Andrew's nature, she knew that the only way forward was to abandon the remnants of the life they had so painstakingly built. In the quiet refuge of a waiting car, the trio drove through empty streets illuminated by the pale glow of streetlights. The car's interior was hushed except for the soft hum of the engine and the occasional whispered reassurances from Camille. "We're going to be okay, baby," she murmured to Amira, who stared out the window at a world that now seemed both vast and uncertain. Nicole's presence at her side was a comforting reminder that true friends remain steadfast even when the foundations of one's life tremble. That night, as they arrived at a safe haven, a small rented apartment on the outskirts of the city, Camille felt an overwhelming mixture of sorrow and relief. In the quiet solitude of their temporary refuge, she cradled Amira close, the weight of the day's events settling heavily in her heart. Yet, amid the anguish, there was also a flicker of hope, a promise that they could together rebuild something new and genuine. Camille's mind raced with regret for the lost trust and shattered illusions, but she also recognized the strength that had been born from the crucible of heartbreak. The escape from the wedding, though born of desperation, was also the catalyst for a new beginning. And as she held Amira tight, Camille vowed that the future would be one defined not by the scars of the past, but by the unbreakable bond of a mother's love and the promise of brighter days ahead. The drive home was quiet, the night softened by the gentle glow of passing streetlights and the hum of the car engine. In the intimate silence that enveloped them, Amira's small hand remained firmly clasped in Camille's. The road ahead was uncertain, yet each mile that passed represented not only an escape from a painful chapter, but also the promise of a fresh start, a future where love would be measured not by grand gestures or superficial appearances, but by trust, safety, and the enduring strength of family bonds. In the days that followed, the apartment became a sanctuary of healing. Camille set about rebuilding their lives with renewed purpose, drawing on the inner resilience that had carried her through years of hardship. Each morning, as the first light of dawn crept through the curtains, Camille would whisper promises to Amira, a vow that their hearts, once burdened by sorrow, would now beat in unison with hope. Together, they painted the walls in soft, warm hues, planted a small garden on the balcony, and filled their home with the laughter and gentle chatter that had been absent for far too long. As weeks melted into months, the wounds began to close, and the memories of that fateful night faded into bittersweet echoes of a past that no longer defined them. Camille, fortified by the lessons of her journey, embraced the new reality with cautious optimism. She enrolled in a support group for survivors of domestic strife, where she discovered that sharing her story was not a sign of weakness but a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. Amira, too, found solace in small ways. Through art, through the comforting presence of her mother, and in the quiet supportive glances exchanged with neighbors who came to understand the quiet strength of their little family. One crisp morning, as Camille and Amira walked hand in hand through a sunlit park, Amira's eyes sparkled with the innocent wonder of a child finally unburdened by fear. "Are we going to be okay, Mom?" she asked, her voice gentle yet trembling with hope. Camille knelt down, embracing her daughter tightly. "Yes, baby," she replied, her voice steady and sure. "We will be. I promise you a future filled with love, safety, and endless possibilities." In that heartfelt moment, beneath a canopy of blossoming trees, Camille realized that a new beginning was not merely the absence of pain, it was the active choice to nurture hope and trust, even when the scars of the past remained. Together, They stepped forward into a future defined by resilience and the unbreakable bond of love. Camille knew that while the road ahead might still have challenges, every day was a chance to rebuild, to redefine what it meant to be a family. And in the warmth of that sunlit morning, as laughter mingled with the rustle of leaves and the promise of spring, a new chapter was written, a chapter of healing, hope, and the quiet triumph of the human heart. Thank you so much for watching the entire video. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, subscribe for more amazing content, and leave your thoughts in the comments below. We value your feedback and support. See you next time.
Trong 10 giây.
Thank you for watching this video till the end. If you enjoyed it, please hit the like button, subscribe to our channel, and leave your comments below. We'd love to hear your thoughts.